Hey guys, what's up? It's Jake here. Welcome to my podcast. Thank you for listening. I don't have a name yet for the podcast or the channel that this will be posted on. So, thanks for watching whatever this is on whatever channel it may be on. And I'm here with my good friend and fellow baseball enthusiast, Brian Rockwell. How's it going, Brian?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. So, today we are going to just break down some of the stuff that went on at the winter meetings in Orlando. As you know, or don't know, if you haven't been paying attention, Robinson Cano, former second baseman for the Yankees, signed a deal with the Seattle Mariners. And that's a pretty big deal. I mean, 10 years, I think it's $240 million. It's a lot of money, especially for a guy who's 31 years old. He's in his prime. He's had 2 very good years, and he has some of the best stats in the league in general in the last couple of years.
I mean, he's a second baseman that puts up, first base, third baseman numbers, which is pretty good for a second baseman.
Yeah, and I mean, that's something the Mariners have lacked in the past couple years. I mean, how do you think that it's gonna pan out?
Well, I mean, it saves the Yankees a lot of money that they went out and spent on Beltran and Ellsbury, but I mean, it's gonna help the Mariners obviously. They obviously need better hitters around him to help protect him, because if they don't, there's they got runners in scoring position, say, and then Cano comes up, they're probably going to intentionally walk him, and his walks are going to go up, and his RBIs will go down. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, definitely. And I mean, the Mariners made a somewhat decent effort at trying to protect him with signing Corey Hart and Logan Morrison, but
you got to do better.
Yeah, I mean, Hart's a guy who hasn't played.
Hart's a decent power hitter.
Yeah, he hasn't played since last year. And then you got Lomo, he's very inconsistent.
Yeah, and people also forget about Kendry Morales, who, when he's healthy, he can be a very productive hitter. But I mean, he can't run the bases to save his life. But he's capable of hitting 30 homers a year.
Yeah, and I mean, they have an already solid pitching staff with Felix Hernandez at the head of that staff. But I just don't know if that team.
It's not going to be enough to make them compete in the AL West.
It's a tough division they got out there.
It's a tough division, yeah. I mean, Texas is never going to be bad, and Anaheim's, if they can finally put it together, they'll be really good.
Yep, and speaking of Anaheim, you look at a guy, two guys in Anaheim that have gotten big money contracts and haven't lived up to them so far in Albert Pujols and Josh Hamilton. When you see those deals, what's your opinion on those? Do you think those are worth it for a team to go out there and get the big name guys for the big time money, or do you think maybe a lesser value guy for maybe a slightly cheaper contract? Which one do you think benefits a team more?
Well, I mean, it's tough to say, because you obviously want the best players on your team, and big money comes with big expectations, and sometimes those big name players don't always live up to that. But you can look at a team like Oakland, who literally came out of nowhere with no big names whatsoever, and was a very good team.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a great point. And you look at even other teams from this past year and the past 2 years, like the Baltimore Orioles, for example. You look at that team. Yeah. I mean, they have Adam Jones and Matt Wieters. They got some solid guys, Manny Machado.
Chris Davis had a breakout season.
Yeah, and they made the playoffs. I mean, that's what solid teams do. They're solid from top to bottom. And I mean, the Angels, on paper, they have one of the best lineups out there.
They should be winning the AL West year in and year out, but
exactly.
That hasn't happened.
Yeah, and I mean, but the AL West might be the toughest division in baseball, if in some respects. I mean,
I still think the AL East is probably going to be the toughest, because every single team is capable of competing in that division. And I mean, obviously in the AL West, you have Houston, which isn't going to do anything for like the next five or so years.
Yeah, Houston kind of throws it off. I mean, if you ignore Houston, you got the Angels and the Rangers, who always seem like they come down to the wire, and then you have the Oakland A's, who the past 2 years have just been a pretty big surprise.
They've 'tis the season. They've been kind of like an island of misfit toys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you got guys like Donaldson, and I mean I know they lost Chris Young, but he was a major contributor last season. And then they got Grant Balfour came out of the bullpen. He was lights out most of the time, and they got young up and coming pitching. Tommy Malone, Jared Parker, AJ Griffin. So I mean they'll be good for a long time.
Yep, they've got a good foundation for their team. Looking forward, I mean they'll be pretty good for the next couple years. I just don't know if they can keep up this. Seems like a magical run that happens every year at the end of the season where they just come back and storm back. But I mean, when you have a team of guys that are pretty much, as you said, a bunch of the misfit toys. I mean, they know that no one thought they would be anywhere near that good 2 years ago, and they came back and beat the big name Rangers in the last weekend of the season.
It's always good to you don't have those big expectations put on you, and you're able to perform better.
Yep, and that ties into those big contracts. You have some of these guys that get all this money and they feel the pressure that comes along with those paychecks, and then you look at guys that maybe want to earn that money that are just playing their hearts out every day. And I mean, I'm not saying that the big name money guys aren't playing their hearts out, but it's a whole different aspect of the game.
Exactly.
And I mean, even speaking of two pretty big name franchise type guys, you got Prince Fielder and Ian Kinsler who swapped teams this offseason. You got Fielder going down to Texas and Kinsler up to Detroit. How do you think those two trades, that one trade, but how do you think that affects each team?
I think it helps both teams. I mean, that Fielder contract was going to cause a lot of problems for how much money he was going to be paid, and that was really going to limit them from signing anybody else. And the Tigers didn't really have like a solid second baseman. I mean, yeah, Omar Infante was pretty decent, but Kinsler's obviously going to be very, very solid over there at second base.
Yep, I agree. And I mean, the Rangers were a solid team last year. They definitely missed the bat of Josh Hamilton. That's no question. And I feel like with Prince Fielder, they got some of that bat back, and he can also DH, so he doesn't have to play first.
Yeah, and he'll have a really fun time in that hitter's ballpark down in Arlington because the ball really flies out of that ballpark.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, when he played in Milwaukee, that's a hitter's park, but that's nowhere near a hitter's park as Arlington in the summer. Ooh, that'll be interesting to watch. Some other moves we have for our Washington Nationals. Trading Steve Lombardozzi to Detroit for the likes of Doug Fister. What do you think about that one?
Well, I mean, you can't just say we lost Steve Lombardozzi. We also lost Ian Kroll, who was a very valuable reliever last season, and I mean, obviously Doug Fister's a very, very good pitcher, and he does not get enough credit. I mean, he's capable of being a number one, but he's going to be our number four, which really says something. And I honestly I think that puts us like, I mean, Dan Herron, I mean, had a bad year, but like when he was on, he was pretty decent, and so I definitely think that makes the Nationals rotation very, very solid.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. You look at the Nats rotation now. You got Jordan Zimmerman, who is one of the most underrated pitchers in baseball. You got Steven Strasburg, who everyone knows about, Gio Gonzalez, now Fister in that fourth spot, and then Detweiler as the fifth spot, which, in my mind, is undoubtedly the best rotation in baseball. You have the Dodgers, who have a very solid rotation now with Dan Herron, but
yes,
but I just think that the roster from top to bottom that the Nationals have put together over the last couple of years it's shocking. I mean, you look at them a couple years ago, they're the worst team in baseball. They come back and make the playoffs last year, and it's pretty remarkable what they've been able to do.
Yeah, I mean, they've just been making moves, like everything that they need to, everything that they needed to get this offseason, they got. They got the left-handed reliever and Jerry Blevins from Oakland a few days ago. They got a nice bench player, Nate McLeod, who's always been a solid player, really good on defense and can hit the ball really well. So, I mean, they've checked all the boxes this offseason.
Yep. And then you look at the opposite end of the franchise spectrum, you could call it. You have the big New York Yankees who seem like they have enough money to buy everyone in baseball. They added Brian McCann, Carlos Beltran, and Jacoby Ellsbury this offseason. And, I mean, that's three pretty upper-class players, if you ask me. But, I mean, how do you think how do you feel like each of these guys is going to fit into the lineup?
Well, McCann, I think, is obviously going to fit in the best. I mean, they needed a solid catcher, and with that short porch in right field, what is it, like 314 down the line? He will go off in that stadium. He will hit at least 30 homers in that stadium. From Ellsbury, I think they kind of overpaid. I mean, 7 years for Jacoby Ellsbury, who's been very proven to be very injury prone. I mean, yes, he's young, but it's just that factor, like, can he stay healthy? But if he can stay healthy, that'll be a very good signing for him down the line. And Beltran, yes, I think is very good, but I don't know. I mean, the Beltran is. I think they gave him like one more year than they probably should have, because he's definitely getting up there in age. I mean, he can still hit, but I mean, I think they might have given him a year too long.
Yeah, I think they maybe. I feel like that extra year is probably thrown in there just because the Yankees have the luxury of the DH. So I mean, when he's already banged up as it is, so but he can still hit.
That's true, but I mean, and then again, the Yankees have interest from the Reds, in Gardner, and trading Phillips for Gardner. So, if that trade ever did go down, they would need Beltran in the outfield.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're talking about moving Ichiro.
Yeah, which is he's a big time player out there. And taking a look at some of the leftover guys, you got Shin-Soo Choo, who has been pretty much the talk of the MLB since Cano was signed, because everyone feels like he has the most potential to make a difference on whatever club he ends up on. How do you feel he fits in? Like, what are your opinions on his strengths and weaknesses?
Well, I mean, he's a very solid player. He can lead off for you. He gets on base a lot. He has a great arm. He's capable of hitting 25 to 30 homers a year. I mean, he's not very fast, obviously, but he can be a great table setter. He can be he can give you like 5 to 10 assists, or more than that probably, in the outfield every year. So I mean, he'll definitely help any club that he goes to.
I definitely agree. So now let's both take a look at. We'll pick one team that we feel did the best job so far this offseason, and one team that we feel just really dropped the ball. Let's start off with the bad news first. I'll go first. I'm going to go with the Baltimore Orioles. I just feel like getting rid of Jim Johnson for Jemile Weeks. I don't even call it a trade, because they got back Jemile Weeks, who he's just not. He has great potential. I'll give him that, but he's not worthy of one of the best closing pitchers in baseball, probably the best closing pitcher in the American League. And it's just they haven't really signed anyone else. They lost McLeod to the Nats, and they just haven't really made that one move that really puts them over the top that'll keep them in the hunt for the AL East pennant this year.
Yeah, I agree with you on Baltimore. I mean, losing Jim Johnson is big. I mean, the guy had over 100 saves in the past 2 seasons. And, I mean, the Orioles did need a second baseman in Jemile Weeks. Brian Roberts was never healthy. And I think Alexi Casilla is a free agent this year, so they did need help on second base. But, I mean, they probably could have gotten more for Jim Johnson than just Alexi Casilla.
I agree.
I mean, not Alexi Casilla, Jemile Weeks.
Yep. And for the best teams, I mean, this is probably going to sound like I'm only saying this because I'm a Nats fan and they're my hometown team, but I feel that the Washington Nationals have made the biggest improvements that are necessary improvements this offseason with Doug Fister, who really, as if the rotation wasn't already good enough, he just makes it even better. And we do give away Lombardozzi and Kroll, who are two underrated, solid guys who will definitely benefit the clubs that they're on. But I just feel like the addition of him really throws the Nats over the top with the position players that they already have, and the addition of McLeod, who's a very solid substitute he can play any position in the outfield. And with Bryce Harper's recent injury concerns, that definitely gives new manager Matt Williams some peace of mind out there.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree. Washington has definitely made the most moves this offseason, but I want to go back to the team that probably took a step backward during the offseason. I'm going to go with the Philadelphia Phillies.
Wow.
They made two moves. They re-signed Carlos Ruiz to a 3-year deal, and they signed Marlon Byrd to a 2-year deal. That's not what you want to do. They're an old team. Marlon Byrd is in his upper 30s, and Carlos Ruiz is getting up there in age as well. they're a very old team. They have very little youth besides, Dominic Brown and Cody Ashley. So I definitely think they took a step backwards this offseason for sure.
That's a great point. I didn't even think of that. And they also have some, I don't know how to call it, but the situation with Cliff Lee and Cole Hamels about what to do with them, because they have a lot of money that they're supposed to pay those guys.
Yeah. And
So
with the loss of Roy Halladay, him retiring, that's a big loss to that rotation where everybody thought that was the best rotation in baseball for like 5 or so years.
yep. I mean, it's crazy, and the best part is the off season is just beginning, so there's a lot of time for some new moves, trades coming up, and
Oh yeah.
so that's pretty much all that we have for this podcast, but there will be another one and a lot more coming out in the near future. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching, everybody. Really appreciate it.